I'm Julia Kempton.
And I'm Shravan Putlori. This is the EDG Weekly News Update.
Well, around this time last year, I talked a fair amount about the war in Ukraine in my weekly news updates and the price shocks or supply shocks it has sent into the global commodity markets, especially for grain and oil. Today, we're going to talk about the unintended consequences of a policy undertaken by the Polish and Hungarian governments in response to the war on their border. Unintended, but from an economic point of view, not unexpected.
The agricultural sector has long been an important part of the Polish economy, employing 10% of the total workforce. Grain, in particular, has been a major export of the Polish and many other Eastern European economies since the days of the Soviet Union. The sector has been rapidly growing too. Total Polish wheat, rye, mixed grains, triticale, barley, corn, and oat production in 2020 reached 3.3 million metric tons, a 15.5% increase over 2019 and 2020.
However, the breadbasket of the region has always been Ukraine. Ukraine has historically been a major producer of wheat and grain, with it and Russia collectively exporting a third of the world's wheat supply, 70% of its sunflower oil, and 20% of the world's corn prior to the start of the war. While exports are down for Ukraine, it's still producing enough to export. However, due to the Russian government obstructing Ukrainian grain exports via sea, a lot more of it is being shipped through Eastern Europe to Western European countries.
These exports have been furthered by European nations' willingness to receive Ukrainian grain. Almost a year ago, the EU voted to suspend tariffs on Ukrainian grain. This was in order to throw the country an economic lifeline during its time of crisis.
But these measures have led to a lot of grain getting stuck in Eastern Europe, flooding the market and causing the price of grain to fall sharply. Because many Eastern European farms are owned by small farmers, this has put many of their livelihoods at risk as they see declining profits. As a result, farmers' protests broke out across Europe, most prominently in Romania, but also in Bulgaria and Poland.
Last summer, a UN-brokered channel from the port of Odessa has allowed some grain exports from Ukraine to reach Africa and the Middle East, and these exports are continuing to a degree. But most Ukrainian grain is still being transported over land through Eastern Europe. So not only is there a glut of grain, but Ukrainian farmers, who already had higher yields in some cases than their Polish counterparts, are willing to take below market prices for their grain, since it might otherwise rot in a warehouse.
The Polish government was the first to ban grain imports from Ukraine following the farmers' protests. The conservative ruling coalition, Prawie i Sprawiedliwości's primary voter base is in Poland's agricultural heartlands. Hungary followed suit, and Slovakia announced a ban on some Ukrainian imports but not grain. Other nations are considering similar measures.
Oftentimes, policies undertaken for political motivations, even admirable ones, like to help a country ravaged by war, can have spillover effects elsewhere in the economy. In many ways, this is the most basic principle of economic development, but with the Polish grain issue, we're seeing it play out in real time.
That's our story for the week. Now, on to the meeting.